Hello everyone, welcome back to Blockman editor tutorial. In these videos, we will give you a complete introduction to the Blockman editor. In this video, we will introduce you more about the missiles. Alright, let's get started. Launch the editor and select missile in the game components view. We can create a new missile by clicking the create button or the add button. For example, click create and enter a name. Then click confirm to complete the creation. At this point, the properties related to the newly created missile will appear in the property view on the right. Let's first look at the basic properties of missiles. The first is the missile model. There are two types of missile models, no model and model. No model means the missile does not have a model appearance. We can't see a specific appearance shape. If we choose the model, then we can choose the model appearance of the missile through the model preview box. Note that the missile model needs to be a mesh. You can download the mesh model you want from the editor store. Next is the missile collision volume. We can adjust the collision range of the missile here. There are four types of collision volumes, namely cuboid, cylinder, capsule, and sphere. We can adjust the collision volume of the missile by setting the relevant parameters of each type. Note that whether the missile can hit the target is determined by the collision volume, not the size of the model. If you find that the missile you have set penetrates between the two models upon hitting the target entity, and the desired effect does not occur, then you need to at least check whether the collision volume of the missile, or the target entity is set reasonably. Finally, let's take a look at the flight status. After the missile is launched, if the target entity is far away, the missile will fly a certain distance before hitting the target entity. Maximum moving speed is one of the conditions that determines how fast a missile flies. The larger the maximum moving speed we set, the faster the missile will fly, when it reaches the maximum speed. For the acceleration property, if we set a value greater than 0, then when the missile is launched, its flight speed will gradually accelerate from 0 to the maximum moving speed. If the value of the acceleration is 0, then when the missile is launched, it flies at the maximum moving speed and does not accelerate. For gravitational acceleration, if the value we set is greater than 0, then the missile will perform a parabolic motion during the flight. But if the value is set to 0, then the missile will not perform parabolic motion during flight. Spin speed determines whether the missile rotates around the y-axis after being launched. If the value of this property is not 0, then the missile will rotate around the y-axis at the set speed during flight. As for follow the target, if we check this property, then the missile will follow the target entity after being launched. After the missiles are launched, there will be more and more missiles in game if they are not destroyed in time, which will eventually lead to performance problems. For example, there can be severe lags or even a crash in game. So how do we destroy launched missiles? Here, a missile's life cycle is involved. In the life cycle of a missile, the first thing to focus on is the duration and vanish duration. The duration here refers to how long it takes for the missile to enter the dying state after it is launched. For example, if we set 5 seconds, it means that the missile will enter the dying state 5 seconds after being launched. The vanish duration refers to the delay before a missile vanishes after it enters the dying state. Once we have determined these values, we can configure the 3 stages that the missile will go through when it exists. The 3 phases are when launched, when hitting, and when disappearing. When launch property mainly sets the sound effects and effects when the missile is launched. You can set sound effect related properties here in sound effect when launched, including whether to loop the sound effect, the volume, and the audio file, etc. You can also set effects related properties in special effect when launched. If you check time limit, you need to use it together with time of special effect. Their function is to limit the playback time of special effects. You can also adjust the position, angle, and size of the effect by adjusting the launch position of special effect launch angle, and effect size. During the phase of when hitting, if you check max hits, and set a value for entity hits count, the missile will vanish when the number of hits reaches the upper limit. If unchecked, the missile will only vanish when the duration expires. For example, we set the duration of the missile to 10 seconds and the max hits to be 3. It can be seen that the missile is destroyed after hitting the entity 3 times. We can also specify which entities the missile can hit by configuring the target team, target type, and target template in upon hitting. There are 4 types of properties in target team, mainly all entities, entities from other teams, entities on the same team, and entities from the designated team. When we select entities from the designated team, we can determine which team of entities the missile can hit by specifying the team's ID. Click the Add button to the right of the team ID to add the team ID setting item. Click this button multiple times to add multiple team ID setting items. It should be noted that the ID of each team is unique, so if there are multiple team ID setting items, remember not to fill in a duplicate ID. If you want to delete a team ID setting item, you can click the menu button on the right, and operate in the small pop-up window. In the target type property we can specify whether the entity is a player or an NPC. The NPC entity here refers to the entity we created in the entity component. In the target template properties, if we selected entity of designated template, then we can click the Add button on the right side of the entity template to add a template setting item to specify an entity template. If you need to add multiple entity templates, you can click the Add button multiple times to configure. If a missile can hit an entity multiple times, then we can set time interval for continuous hit to determine the minimum interval between consecutive hits by the missile. When the missile hits an entity, we can also configure a skill to trigger when the missile hits the entity to achieve a specific effect upon hitting. For example, if we configure an attack skill, then when the missile hits the entity will lose HP, and get knocked back a certain distance. Setting the sound effects and effects when hitting is similar to setting those when launching. You can experience it yourself. During the phase of when disappearing, you can configure the skill triggered when the missile is vanishing in the vanish skill. The sound effects and effects when disappearing can be set similarly to setting those when launching, and you can experience it yourself. Missiles are usually used in conjunction with skills. Among skill types of the basic skills, there is a type named missile. We can create missile type skills, and configure our created missiles in the skills. Then missiles can be launched through skills. Of course, we can also write event logic for missiles to achieve more complex logic effects. You can find event logic for missiles explained in upcoming videos. That's all for this video. We hope it can help you on your way to a great creator. If you want to know more about the editor, you can comment below the video or post on the official forum. See you in the next video.